Hi guys, how are you? It's Reneé. I was just filming this video and my camera just decided I was done. So we're gonna start over again and we'll see how committed I am to this if this continues to happen. So what I was talking about before, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of the most beautiful oud fragrances that I have been enjoying recently in my collection. We will start off with what was my previous number one before the camera shut off, and that is Nightingale. This is by Zoologists. And it is a brand that I heartily enjoy. And as I said before, Zoologist isn't a brand that I enjoy because I own the most of it. It's a brand that I enjoy because of the fragrances that I do own, which is only 5 of them. And they have quite an extensive collection. The 5 that I own are high quality, beautiful, creative, long-lasting, highly projecting, and interesting in their wearing fragrances that I happen to get real jazzed for. So this one is my most recent acquisition and probably my last acquisition from the house, unless something else comes along and excites me. I've sampled most of them like this, you know, I've got what I want, you know. So, but this was a pre-owned bottle that I bought, and while it certainly wasn't filled to the brim, I have used quite a lot out of what was the remainder of the fluid, including decanted for my friend so that she had the opportunity to sample this. So I've also recently worn this to some of the wedding festivities for my friend's wedding. Now this fragrance is mostly, oh my lord, it's a floral, ambery, woody fragrance. And the wood that is most prominent in here is oud. It has a very dark and heavy, but still somehow polite oud at the base of it. And by polite, I mean it doesn't oftentimes have that fecal quality that when people talk about oud, they talk about primarily that, which I think is nonsense because it depends on the type of oud and what the fixative is, but whatever. We're not getting into that. What I'm saying is that oud is beautiful and we should give it more of a chance. But the oud that is here is a very clean oud. Now, with that being said, this is a surprisingly dark fragrance. Towards the mid and the end or the base of this fragrance becomes very dark and heavy, and I attribute that to the oud that is in here. At the beginning of the fragrance, there's a citrusy floral quality, and the florals are sort of tropical. It gives me a little bit damp and sort of green, and I have no problems because of how like effervescent it kind of feels in the beginning, attributing this to like a nightingale that's just like running around here. Now, towards the mid and the end of this fragrance, as mentioned, it does get a little deeper, a little darker, heavier, somewhat sweeter, and the amber and the oud that makes this somewhat of a heavy fragrance really predominates and shine. And the floral notes are still there, but they're less of a player in the front and more of a player in the background, and I really enjoy it. So that's number 1 on the list of ouds that I have been enjoying. My second one is the second fragrance in this collection. I have 2 of them here for us this evening because I could not make up my mind, people. This is my most recent acquisition from the Portraits collection, and this is the Uncompromising Mr. Sohan. Now this bad boy has been really killing the game for me. It is good, guys. It is good. There is a saffron, which is very spicy, and a cumin, I think, note at the beginning of this that is really just doing the thing. It is so sexy, but in that like sweaty, but a good sweat, like I've been doing all the right things to get this sweaty and you like it. That's what that gives me at the beginning. And then it turns into this like sweet, almost candied, but not very sweet. This is not a sweet fragrance, but there's an element of candidness to the rose that adds a little bit of sweetness to it. And then it dries down into a somewhat polite oud. Now, I will not say a clean oud because I don't think that any oud that shows up in this fragrance, given the animalic touches that the saffron and the cumin add at the beginning, with that like sweaty, body musky type of vibe that it gives off at the beginning, that then contrasts to that candied rose and then gets down to the oud. Like, I don't think that oud in that transition is a very clean oud, but it is somewhat polite because this is Penhaligon's after all. Nothing of their brand is too out of the way or extra, but it is a somewhat animalic tinged oud that lasts. Now, I have several of the Portrait collection, and I do not think that they are the longest lasting Penhaligon's fragrance there is. They have a decent longevity, but not long by any stretch of the imagination, particularly when you think about the price per milliliter that you're paying. However, the Uncompromising Sohan is a gorgeous fragrance. Check it out, buy it, live it up. It is sexy. Okay, moving on. We are going to talk about something pretty, something pretty. And we are going to go to Areej Dore, and this is Grandenia. Now, this is my one and only Areej Dore fragrance. I cannot play into the scarcity politics that goes so heavily behind this brand. He makes like a select amount of fragrance that is guaranteed because of the hype behind this brand to sell out. And then, man, if you happen to get your hands on this, the resale value of some of these fragrances, astronomical. If you were able to get like a couple of them that you didn't need, and keep the one that you want and resell the rest, you can make money. You can make money. It's a guaranteed return on your investment. But anyways, let's talk about this one here. This is Grandenia, a fragrance that I happen to only catch because I subscribe to Russian Adam's channel on YouTube, but I don't really keep up with his announcements like that. So by the time I find out that they're having a sale, the 6th or 7th or 8th, whatever collection we're on at this point, these things have already sold out because people are on top of getting these fragrances. So I was able to get this fragrance because whatever was left over came to Lucky Scent. And I finally bit the bullet, went ahead and bought it, and I said, let me try it out because it intrigued me. Now, I was a little afraid of the gardenia that this fragrance is based off of because sometimes I don't do very well with the white florals, but this is such a gorgeous fragrance. I don't know what everybody else gets, but on my skin, this is surprisingly powdery. It is a beautiful, beautiful, powdery, woody, lightly floral fragrance. And it's interestingly linear. There are points where it's more powdery than woody, and then towards the end, the powderiness never fails, but the woodiness of the oud really predominates. But this is an oud that to me rubs against my skin like this softest of soft shawls, something that just drapes and then water falls down and just is soft and pretty and smooth. I cannot emphasize how smooth this fragrance is, which makes sense to me because all of the tinctures that are in here are aged tinctures from several years. Some of them I think as long as like the 1930s. You don't believe what you want to believe unless that's a marketing tool, but it does say that some of them go back I think until the 1930s. This feels like a well-aged bottle of some fine liqueur on my skin. And baby, when I tell you that that bad boy lasts, I went to work. I think it's work appropriate. That's me. I think it's work appropriate. But I went to work and I worked a 13-hour shift. Now keep in mind, I am present and ready to roll out an hour and a half prior to my shift. And then of course, by the time I get home and take all these things off, it's like an hour and a half past my shift. So if it's 13-hour shift, you know, with getting an hour and a half on each side, that's 3 hours. You know, you're talking about a 16, 17-hour day. I went to bed after I showered and Grandenia was still sitting up and saying hello. And it was only when I went to bed that evening that she really just kind of let loose her chokehold. But it's gorgeous. It's so gorgeous. Also, you could just like, take out an eye. Take out an eye. Look at that. Look at that. Beautiful packaging, beautiful presentation. I have the case in my room in there. I didn't bother to bring it out. Just beautiful fragrance. I think this is probably one of the easiest ones that Areej Dore has made. But either way, I was glad to have the chance to check it out. Moving on. We're going to talk about a brand that is new to me, but certainly not new. And honestly, like for me to check this out, I blind bought 3 of their fragrances. That's probably not wise, but so far I have not been disappointed. And the brand that I'm talking about is Orto Parisi. Orto Parisi. This is a brand that runs congruent with Nasomato. It is the same perfumer. And then what does he also do? I cannot remember. I think Nasomat is also another brand. You find it on like the online discounters, and I think it's the same guy, but don't quote me on that. I read it randomly and I could be misremembering. But this is a brand, Orto Parisi, and this is Stercus. Now this is, you see the color of this juice. This is supposed to be somewhat a naughty fragrance or an anticipation of naughtiness because the name means feces. So people expect quite a dirty fragrance from this. And I personally don't find it to be that way. I find it to be a quite personable fragrance once you get past the oud that is in the very beginning of this fragrance. And I think that's where this comparison to the fecal matter may occur, because the oud that is here is somewhat impolite. I'm not gonna say fecal, and I'm not gonna say nasty or barnyardy or whatever it is, these words that other people associate with it. I think oud is beautiful, and I don't mind the fecal associations for the most part. I think this is a smidgen impolite, but for the most, it's just pretty, you know, that impoliteness in the beginning, where it might be slightly pungent, fades quite quickly, and then it gets down into this just beautiful ambery, almost chocolatey, woody base that is just pretty and long lasting. So the 3 that I have would be Stercus, Bocanaro, and Seminalis. And of the ones that the one that I expected to like the most is the one that I currently like the least. And the one that I expected to just be pretty meh about is actually Stercus. And this is the one that I like the most. And I like all of them. Just because I'm ranking them doesn't necessarily mean that they're not all doing the job they're supposed to do. I smell amazing when I wear them, and these things last and project for a long, long time. So while this is my favorite here now, particularly because of the oud note that is present at the beginning and that lasts throughout the lifetime of the fragrance, but is accompanied by somewhat gourmand slash like sweet woody notes. This is goodness. This is goodness. I like it. All right, we've got 4 more to go. 4 more to go. So let's talk about this bad boy. You can see the fingerprint. You know I've been using it. You know I've been handling it. This is Oud Ambrosie by Maison Lancome. Now, I had been on a quest to find this fragrance. I have L'Outre Oud and I have Oud Bouquet. And of all of the oud fragrances that Maison Lancome had, this is the one that I wanted the most. And then second was L'Outre Oud, which I got talked out of buying by my friend Reneé. And I ended up picking up Oud Bouquet. Now, I do not regret Oud Bouquet because that is a banging fragrance. But it's just interesting how things work out. Like, that's the one that I ended up with, you know, which is the one that I wanted least. But anyways, my latest acquisition has been Oud Ambrosie. Now, I've had this for some time. I mean, when it popped up on Fragrance Buy, like my add to cart. Yeah, we were all over it. This is sexy. You know, like, this is life making me eat my words because I done already said some nonsense about how I don't think that fragrances are sexy, right? I said that. I have made that public on my channel here. And for the most part, I do think that is true. I think that the fragrance is just one facet of your personality, right? If you're pretty and then you open your mouth and you're a terrible person by the things that you say, that prettiness goes away. You're not sexy no more, you know? If you are not traditionally attractive, but you've got a gorgeous smile, you've got a gorgeous spirit, you know, if you've got that je ne sais quoi, then there's something about you that becomes undeniably attractive and that draws people in. If you are average in both of these things, then sometimes it can be your fashion sense. It can be your personality. It can be the way you smell as you're walking on by that gives somebody, that hits that button, you know? And so there's so many things that go into something being sexy that I hesitate to say unqualified that this is sexy. However, I do think that when you add to that total package, this is one of those things that elevates you from like, oh, she smells good to like, this is sexy. This is smoky, honeyed oud. Smoke, honey, oud. That smoke is real polite, but that honey can sometimes be a little bit too much. Not cloying, but to me, on my skin, honey can go a smidgen out animalic, and I think that this kind of shows up here in this honey on my skin. And then the combination of the honey and that slightly animalic tinged honey and that heavy woody oud adds a little hint of smoke there. There's a hint of like fruitiness at the beginning that I get out of the bottle, but not on my skin. It's a fairly linear fragrance, honestly, but it doesn't need to change up. It doesn't need to do a whole lot because what it does well. I love this. I now own all 3 ouds from Maison Lancome, and I am happy. I'm happy about it. I'm happy about it. Moving on. The last one from this house, this is Penhaligon's Bewitching Bewitching Yasmine. Now, this is another one of these fragrances that we're about to get into how sexy this thing is. This on a woman, This is, I think, legit one of the prettiest ouds I have ever smelled. It is dark, it is sexy, it is mysterious. It has that edge to it that you couldn't really imagine like a woman wearing this fragrance unless she was really up to no good. You might as well announce to the world you're up to no good, you wearing this. And I like it. I don't have a fragrance on right now, and I'm contemplating whether or not I want this to be the fragrance of the evening. I don't know. I'm trying to do December, you know? That's where I wear nothing but Ambrosie in December. But that makes me want to break that rule. And by December, I mean like fragrances that are predominantly amber-based fragrances, not fragrances that dry down to like this ambery thing in the base, ambery woody thing in the base, which so many fragrances do. All right, moving on. And these are the last two that I have. We are going to get into this one here that I need more. This is the one that I have, and there are like at least two more that I need in my life. And this is Juliet Mad, and this fragrance is Garuda. Look at that juice. Look at the volume that I've used. Look at this cap. You heard somebody. People always talk about the Parfums de Marly cap. Yeah, this is in that league. This is the juice Garuda. Garuda is heavy on the oud for an amber-based fragrance. This is an amber, but it is a woody amber with an emphasis on the woods. And to some, this may be a masculine fragrance simply because of the amount of woods that are present here, and primarily the oud that you get in the woods that are present here. It is a very oudy amber fragrance. However, in the beginning of the fragrance, this is sort of a candied, powdery, ambery fragrance. And this is gorgeous. It is so gorgeous. At first when I got it, I was a little like, I don't know, son, because it is pretty woody, and that oud was just like, hey, how you doing? Hey. That oud was there, but I was an oud beginner at that time. And now that I have grown into knowing and loving oud some more, I am really appreciative of the oud that lives here, because it is present. If you don't like ouds, and if you don't like a woody fragrance, this might not be the amber for you. However, they have two others, I think Amor de Palacio and Secrets. I can't remember the other one, but there are two more that are very close to this that you might want to check out if this ain't your jam. Particularly if you want an amber fragrance, you can get one that's a lot less oudy and woody than Garuda. But for the purposes of what I am enjoying lately, Garuda is hitting all the boxes. And last but certainly not least of my oud fragrances that I enjoy, I've got a lot more, but I just pulled out a couple today because I didn't feel like moving all of the others, so we just brought a couple. This is legit a very, very recent acquisition, and by recent I mean like within the last 2 weeks, maybe less. Now, I have discovered a joy for Xerjoff fragrances, and I am particularly enchanted with the Oud Stars collection. I have several of them from the Oud Stars collection. I also have several from the Join the Club collection as well. Those two collections are my favorite thus far. But the Oud Stars, yes. And now I'm featuring this one, which is Alcate. This is Alcate from the Oud Stars collection from Xerjoff. And I'm featuring it because it was the one, of all the ones that I have acquired currently, it was the one that I thought that I would like the least. And I bought it simply because, I don't know, I want to say it's the completionist in me. There's something that, like, as much as I thought I wasn't gonna like it, I was looking at the notes and I was just imagining what it would smell like in my head, and I'm just thinking to myself, you gotta give it a try, Reneé. You gotta give it a try. I think you're gonna be surprised at what this gives you. And so I saw it for a really good price, especially in comparison to what Xerjoffs normally go for, and I bit the bullet, and by God, am I glad that I did. This, I will say, as much as I am super iffy on jasmine, this is beautiful. There are several jasmine fragrances that I have in my collection that I am inclined towards thinking is quite lovely, despite the fact that jasmine is very, very iffy for me. This is a very indolic jasmine. However, it is a jasmine that does not give me a terrible headache, and I can wear it. There is something so pretty about it, and a little bit creamy. And the oud in here, this is not a nice, polite oud. This oud, especially in conjunction with that slightly indolic jasmine, is a little funky. It is a little funky. It hits me here. It hits me in all the good places. I love it. I love it. And I'm so glad that I gave this a try. I'm so glad that I did not just like let the note of jasmine like have me walking on by, because this is sexy. This is beautiful. This is filth, but in the best way. This is like, if in your most austere outfit with like sky high monochromatic heels, just to add a little bit of interest, and you are wearing this with your hair in a very proper bun, but like maybe dagger earrings, you know. Listen, it is sexy, controlled sexiness, elegant sexiness, but it's a little bit filthy too. And I love it. I love it. That oud is just like, hey, what you doing? Pay attention to me. And I love it. I love it. I love it. All right, guys, that is it for me. That's 8 oud-based fragrances that I've been enjoying recently. I hope you're having a good evening. Talk to you later.